imagine the feelings of being constantly confronted by the army. Kids barely out of school, brought up to believe you are their enemy and given complete power over your life. They are your police, judges and jailers. I imagine being forced to obey their every whim, no matter how ridiculous or humiliating. I imagine being forced into this compliance, knowing that they are unrestricted by a proper judicial system, knowing that they can beat you, imprison you, shoot you, and no one would notice. Comrades, we notice. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not a conflict between equal sides. It is a situation where one side is occupying and oppressing the other. There will be no peace until that occupation is ended. There will be no peace without justice. The PLO recognised Israel in exchange for a peace process that would lead to two independent sovereign states. But Israel continued to flout international law. Israel, even when they withdrew from Gaza, Israel used its withdrawal as an excuse to further expand settlements in the West Bank and to impose a blockade on Gaza. Israel still completely controlled Gaza. There have been numerous ceasefires, but when the level of rocket attacks decreased, Israeli military operations intensified, and the level of supplies reaching Gaza were further reduced. Hamas currently does not recognise Israel, and that is the reason given for ending economic sanctions. But there is plenty of evidence of the potential for Hamas to be more pragmatic than portrayed. Last November, Hamas tried to stop other groups launching rocket attacks on Israel, denouncing them as Israeli agents. It is unlikely that Hamas will recognise Israel unless UN Resolution 242, requiring Israel to withdraw to pre-1967 borders, is implemented. But only last year, Israel had the opportunity of an open-ended truce that would have been tantamount to peace. That opportunity was squandered by the continued oppression, with the inevitability that Hamas was forced to end the ceasefire. The escalation of the Israeli-Palestine conflict involving the bombardment and invasion of Gaza, although not totally unexpected, was still a shock in terms of both its speed and scale. The ferocity of the attacks, and in particular the fact that over 30% of the casualties and injuries have involved children, is an outrage. Although I have no hesitation in condemning the Hamas rocket attacks, Israel's behaviour in terms of its blockade of Gaza, illegal occupation of Palestinian territories and current military activities is simply unacceptable, as is the inadequate response of Western governments, and particularly that of the US, where Bush outrageously blamed Hamas for the conflict, where Bush, acting as the poodle of the Israeli government, prevented his own Secretary of State from signing up to an agreement to a United Nations resolution that she helped to draft. It is also inconceivable that the EU can even now be considering extending the provisions of the Israel-EU agreement, when that agreement should have been torn up long ago due to the persistent flaunting by the Israelis of the humanitarian provisions. We hear this morning of United Nations itself is preparing to report Israel to the International Criminal Court for war crimes. Now is the time for Israel to have the opprobrium reaped upon it that in the past was reserved for apartheid South Africa. We cannot put up, we cannot condone the actions of Israel any longer. Today in Birmingham, we are sending a message to our government, to governments in the EU and to the international community that we stand up for the Gazan people and against the illegal activities of the Israeli occupying forces.